The moment my mother-in-law stood up at Thanksgiving dinner and thanked my husband for giving me a place to live, 28 people applauded. They believed I was a struggling wife being supported by the Mercer family. What they didn't know was that I had spent 7 months quietly collecting evidence that my husband had secretly helped his parents charge me rent on my own ranch, and that a forged loan application worth $250,000 was sitting inside a leather folder beside my chair. My name is Serafina Vale. I built Silver Ridge Ranch years before I married Ethan Mercer, and before that dinner was over, the same people who clapped for my humiliation would sit in complete silence as every lie collapsed in front of them. Chapter 1. They thought I need their charity. The last person I expected to thank my husband for giving me a place to live was my mother-in-law. Yet there she was, standing at the head of my dining table on Thanksgiving afternoon, holding a wine glass and smiling as if she had personally saved my life. Around her 28 relatives and family friends sat beneath the warm glow of the chandelier in the great room of Silver Ridge Ranch. The smell of roasted turkey filled the air. Laughter drifted between conversations. Outside the massive windows, the Wyoming mountains were painted gold by the setting sun. I sat quietly near the far end of the table. Ethan sat beside his mother, confident, relaxed, proud. And next to my chair rested a dark leather portfolio that contained enough documents to destroy every lie they had spent the last 7 months building. Darlene lifted her glass higher. "I want to thank my son Ethan," she said. Not every man would be willing to support his wife through such difficult times. Not every man would open his home and provide stability when things get hard. Several people nodded. A few glanced toward me. One woman offered me a sympathetic smile. Claire Donnelly, president of the local ranch and landowners association, sat across the table and looked at me with obvious pity. The applause started slowly, then spread around the room. I kept my expression neutral because in a few hours, every person sitting at that table would learn the truth. They just didn't know it yet. 7 months earlier, my life had looked completely different. I was 38 years old and serving as vice president of supply chain for North Star Freight Systems, one of the largest logistics companies in the region. My workdays were long 12-hour meetings, international vendor calls, contract negotiations, endless spreadsheets and forecasts, but I loved it. Every promotion I earned came from years of work. Every bonus came from sacrifices nobody saw. For years, while other people spent their money on luxury cars or expensive vacations, I invested, I bought stock, I saved aggressively. I planned for the future. In 2018, after receiving the largest bonus of my career, I purchased 42 acres outside Jackson Hole through a holding company called Silver Ridge Holdings, LLC. That land became Silver Ridge Ranch, my dream, my refuge, the place where I imagined growing old. When Ethan and I married in 2020, he knew how much that property meant to me, or at least I thought he did. Everything began to change in May of 2025. One evening, Ethan came home looking exhausted. He dropped into a chair at the kitchen island and rubbed his forehead. "My parents are in trouble," he said. I looked up from my laptop. What kind of trouble? Financial trouble. That answer was vague enough to make me nervous. Over the next hour, pieces of the story came out. Howard and Darlene had made several terrible investments. Some involved agricultural equipment, others involved speculative land purchases. Every deal had gone wrong. They were drowning in debt, their home was being sold, and they had nowhere to go. "They just need a place for a few months," Ethan said, "until they get back on their feet." I remember staring out the kitchen window toward the pastures. Family mattered to me, maybe more than it should have. "If they need help, they can stay here," I finally said. The relief on Ethan's face seemed genuine. At the time, I felt proud of that decision. I had no idea I was opening the front door to people who would eventually try to steal everything I had built. The first few days seemed normal. Then small things started changing. A painting disappeared from the hallway. New curtains appeared in the living room. The antique lamp I had inherited from my grandmother was moved into storage without anyone asking me. I tried to convince myself it wasn't a big deal. Then I started hearing Darlene refer to the ranch in a way that made my stomach tighten. At breakfast, she would say things like our ranch. At dinner, she would call it the Mercer property. One afternoon, she laughed and told a neighbor that the ranch had always been part of the family legacy. I corrected her politely. "Actually, I purchased the property in 2018. Her smile never changed. "Of course you did, sweetheart." The way she said it made me feel ridiculous, as if I were a child insisting the sky was green. The situation worsened quickly. A few weeks later, I attended a community gathering at our local church. People I had known for years were there, business owners, ranchers. Sighed. Families, the usual crowd. I was speaking with a friend when Darlene joined the conversation. She wrapped an arm around my shoulders and sighed dramatically. Poor thing, I forced a smile. Excuse me? She's been through so much lately, Darlene said. Sighed. Several people turned toward us. The sympathy in their eyes appeared instantly. Darlene continued. We're just grateful we can help her during this difficult period. The conversation became painfully awkward. Nobody asked questions. Nobody challenged her. Sighed. They simply accepted the story she was offering. For the rest of the evening, people treated me differently, more gently, more cautiously, like someone whose life was falling apart. Driving home that night, I felt a knot forming in my chest. Something wasn't right. Sighed. But I still hadn't imagined how far they planned to go. The real betrayal arrived 2 weeks later. I came home from work and found Darlene waiting for me at the dining room table. A folder sat in front of her. Howard sat nearby. Sighed. Ethan leaned against the kitchen counter. Nobody looked surprised to see me, as if they had rehearsed this moment. Darlene slid the folder across the table. We need to discuss some new arrangements. I opened it. Inside was a lease agreement. Sighed. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. Then I started reading. My confusion turned into disbelief. What is this? Howard cleared his throat. We've worked things out with the management company. The management company? Sighed. Silver Ridge Holdings has property managers handling everything now, Darlene explained. We've become the primary tenants. I stared at her, then at Ethan, then back at the document. You became tenants of my ranch? Darlene smiled patiently. No, sweetheart, sighed. You're misunderstanding. According to the new arrangement, you'll be contributing toward your housing expenses. The number printed near the bottom of the page felt almost surreal. $4,500 per month. I looked directly at Ethan, sighed. Tell me this is a joke. He didn't. Instead, he folded his arms. Maybe this is the simplest solution. For a moment, the room felt strangely silent, not because of what Darlene had done, but because of what Ethan had chosen. He wasn't standing beside me, sighed. He was standing beside them. That realization hurt more than anything written on the page. I could have exposed everything right then. I could have pulled ownership records. I could have called attorneys. I could have thrown them out. Instead, sighed. I did something they never expected. I said nothing. The next morning, I opened my banking app. I entered the amount, $4,500. In the memo field, I typed a single word. Then I pressed send as the confirmation screen appeared, sighed. I felt something inside me settle into place. If they wanted to turn me into a tenant in my own property, I would let them for now because every lie leaves a trail. And I had just started collecting theirs, sighed. Chapter 2, Every Lie Left a Paper Trail. The first thing I did was not confront my husband. I made an appointment with Valerie Cross. Valerie had handled the original formation documents for Silver Ridge Holdings, LLC back in 2018. She was 55, sharp, composed, sighed, and the kind of attorney who could make silence feel like a courtroom order. Her office sat above a brick storefront in downtown Jackson with a view of the square and the elk antler arches tourists loved to photograph, sighed. I brought her the lease agreement in a plain folder. She read the first page, then the second. By the time she reached the signature block, her mouth had tightened into a line. This is sloppy, she said. Sloppy and arrogant, sighed. She turned the pages toward me and tapped one polished fingernail against the bottom corner. The management company name is wrong. The mailing address belongs to an unrelated registered agent in Cheyenne, sighed. The lease references a property parcel number that does not match Silver Ridge Ranch, and whoever created this used a template meant for urban apartments, not rural acreage. I felt my chest loosen slightly. So it is fake. Valerie looked up at me. Of course it is fake, sighed. But that is not the part that worries me. I sat still. What worries me? She leaned back in her chair, the fact that they believed you would be too intimidated to question it. That sentence landed harder than I expected. I told her everything, sighed. The way Darlene had moved into my home as if she were claiming territory. The way Howard avoided eye contact. The way Ethan stood there while his mother demanded rent from me. The way the word rent looked on my banking confirmation after I pressed send, sighed. Valerie listened without interrupting. When I finished, she folded the lease neatly and placed it back in the folder. Do not confront them, she said. I stared at her. You want me to keep paying? For now, yes, but not carelessly. Every payment needs a clean memo, sighed. Every conversation needs to be documented. Every utility bill they force you to cover, every repair they cause, every threat, every false statement, every altered document. You are not paying rent. You are building a record. Sighed. It was the first time since Darlene slid that folder across my dining table that I felt like I could breathe. That night, I created a new encrypted folder on a private cloud account Ethan did not know existed. I named it Silver Ridge Case File. Inside it, sighed, I created subfolders, bank transfers, photos.txt, poor documents, witness notes. The process calmed me. Order always had. In my work at North Star Freight Systems, when a vendor lied about a shipment delay, emotion did not move freight. Sighed. Documentation did. Dates, signatures, timestamps, invoice, chain of custody. People thought supply chain work was about trucks and warehouses. It was really about proof. By the end of the week, Valerie referred me to Rebecca Sloan, sighed, a forensic accountant in Bozeman who specialized in hidden assets and family business disputes. Rebecca asked for 18 months of bank statements. I sent her 3 years. 2 days later, she called me while I was sitting in my office at the ranch, sighed. Listening to the wind scrape dry branches against the window, Serafina, she said, I need you to sit down. I already was. What did you find? There has been a steady drain from your joint savings account. My fingers tightened around the phone. How much? Sighed. Just under $60,000 over the last 8 months. For a moment, I heard nothing but the low hum of my computer. Where did it go? Some to Howard, some to Darlene. Several transfers to Cassidy Mercer. Sighed. There are also debit card purchases that do not match your spending patterns. Western wear, horse equipment, restaurant charges, hotel stays. Cassidy was Ethan's younger sister. 34 years old, endlessly dramatic. Sighed. And always one failed business idea away from needing someone else's money. The last time I saw her, she was talking about launching an equestrian training brand, despite owning neither horses nor a training facility. I closed my eyes. Sighed. Ethan told me we were saving that money for fencing repairs and winter maintenance. Rebecca was quiet for a beat. He may have told you that. The records say something else. After we hung up, sighed. I sat in the darkening room and looked around the office I had built from nothing, the oak desk, the framed freight map on the wall, the photo of the ranch the day I bought it. I had believed betrayal would feel like a scream. Instead, it felt like a ledger. Cold, sighed. Numbered, impossible to ignore. While Rebecca followed the money, Darlene followed a different strategy. She followed people. At church the next Sunday, she walked from group to group with the softened voice of a woman pretending to carry someone else's burden. Sighed. I watched her touch one woman's arm and lower her eyes. I watched 2 men glance toward me near the coffee table. I watched pity travel faster than truth. By Wednesday, the story had spread to the Ranch and Landowners Association. By Friday, sighed, it had reached the feed store. Darlene was telling people that Ethan and I were nearly bankrupt, that Howard and she had stepped in to stabilize the ranch, that I was struggling emotionally under the pressure of my career and personal finances. Sighed. She never called me unstable directly. She was too careful for that. She simply placed the word struggling into enough conversations that people finished the sentence themselves. Claire Donnelly stopped returning my calls for 3 days. Sighed. When I finally saw her outside the association office, she gave me the kind of smile people use when they have already chosen a side but want to appear kind. Serafina, she said, I hope you know people are rooting for you. Rooting for me? Sighed. She touched my forearm gently. There is no shame in needing help. I looked at her hand, then at her face. What exactly did Darlene tell you? Claire hesitated. Only that things have been difficult, that the Mercers are helping keep the ranch afloat. There it was. Sighed. The lie had grown legs. I wanted to tell Claire everything. I wanted to say that the ranch had never belonged to Ethan, that Darlene had forged a lease, that every sympathetic look was built on a lie. Instead, I remembered Valerie's voice, do not confront them. Sighed. So I smiled. Darlene has always had a gift for storytelling. Claire frowned slightly, unsure whether that was gratitude or warning. The damage reached my professional life 3 days later. Sighed. I was reviewing a shipment delay tied to a medical equipment contract when Jordan Pike called. Jordan was the CEO of a regional distribution company and one of North Star's most important clients. His account was worth $18 million annually, sighed, and I had spent 2 years earning his trust. His voice was careful. Serafina, I need to ask you something uncomfortable. Go ahead. Is North Star having liquidity problems? I sat straighter. No. Why would you ask that? There was a pause. Sighed. I heard something through a Wyoming vendor contact. Something about financial instability at your ranch, creditors, family stepping in. I know personal matters are personal, but our board is sensitive to leadership risk. Leadership risk. 2 words, professional. Sighed. Polite, devastating. My mother-in-law's up had crossed from humiliation into sabotage. Jordan, I said evenly. North Star is financially sound, and so am I. If your board needs reassurance, I can provide whatever operational documentation they require. Sighed. I believe you, he said, but you should know the rumor is out there. After the call, I walked outside onto the porch. The late afternoon air smelled like pine dust and cold earth. Across the fence line, sighed. My neighbor Nathan Cole was repairing a gate on his side of the property. Nathan was 62, a widower, and a third-generation rancher who had known every family within 30 miles for longer than most people had known themselves. He lifted one hand in greeting, sighed. I walked over. Afternoon, Nathan. He studied me for a moment. You doing all right, Serafina? I almost laughed. Depends who you ask. His mouth twitched. I have been hearing things. I bet you have. He leaned one arm against the fence post. Sighed. I also saw Howard walking the south boundary last week with a measuring wheel. Saw Darlene telling Claire Donnelly your in-laws had taken over ranch management. Saw Cassidy pull up yesterday with a trailer full of tack like she owned the place. My pulse slowed. Sighed. You saw all that? Nathan nodded. Took pictures too. Not because I like drama. Because people who lie about land usually do not stop at talking. For the first time in days, I felt less alone. Thank you, I said. He looked toward the mountains. Sighed. Your grandfather did not leave you this land. Your husband did not buy it for you. You built it. Folks ought to remember that. I carried those words back into the house like something fragile and valuable. That evening, Rebecca called again. Sighed. This time her tone was different. I found something else. I set my coffee mug down. What? Ethan has personal debt that is not showing in your joint disclosures. How much? At least $180,000. The room seemed to narrow. Credit cards? Some. Sighed. Private lending. Failed equipment financing. A business line connected to Howard. There may be more. I looked down the hallway toward the closed bedroom door where Ethan had gone to sleep early, pretending exhaustion instead of guilt. Rebecca continued. Serafina sighed. This does not look like greed anymore. I already knew what she was going to say. It looks like desperation. After the call ended, I stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the home they were trying to take from me. The lie had started as rent. Sighed. Then it became reputation, then money, now debt. And for the first time, I understood that my husband's family was not simply trying to humiliate me. They were running out of time. Chapter 3, they started acting like they owned everything the next morning. Sighed. The first thing I heard was hooves, not birds, not wind. Hooves heavy, impatient hooves striking frozen ground outside my office window. I stood from my desk and looked through the glass. A long silver horse trailer was parked beside the north pasture gate. Sighed. Cassidy Mercer stood in front of it wearing a white quilted vest, designer sunglasses, and boots that had never seen real mud. Beside her, 4 horses stiffened and snorted in the cold morning air. I opened the back door and stepped onto the porch. Cassidy sighed. What are you doing? She looked up as if I were interrupting her on land that belonged to her. Moving the horses in, I walked down the steps slowly. You did not ask me. She gave a light laugh. Mom said it was fine. Your mother does not own this ranch. Sighed. Cassidy's smile sharpened. Well, neither do you anymore, apparently. For 1 second, I felt the old heat rise in my throat. The urge to correct her, the urge to say every legal word that would wipe that smug look off her face. Sighed. But I had learned something in the last few weeks. People who believed they were winning became careless. So I looked at the horses, then at the pasture, then back at Cassidy. Do you have boarding paperwork? She blinked. What? Insurance, liability coverage. Sighed. Feed schedule, vaccination records, agreement. Cassidy rolled her eyes. Their horses, nuclear weapons behind her. Ethan came out of the barn carrying a coil of rope. My stomach tightened. He had known. Sighed. He walked toward us with that practiced calm he used whenever he wanted me to feel unreasonable. Cass just needs a place for a while, he said. A place for 4 horses? She's family. I looked at him. And I'm what? His jaw flexed. Sighed. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Darlene appeared on the porch in a thick cream sweater holding a coffee mug with both hands. Family supports family, she called down. That is what decent people do. There it was again, the moral trap. If I said no, sighed. I was selfish. If I objected, I was dramatic. If I protected my own property, I was the problem. So I reached into my jacket pocket and opened my phone camera. Cassidy frowned. Are you recording me? Sighed. I'm documenting the condition of the pasture before the horses enter. Ethan stepped closer. Don't be ridiculous. I kept filming. This is not permission. This is documentation. Sighed. Cassidy muttered something under her breath and led the first horse through the gate anyway. By sunset, the north pasture looked like it had been dragged by machinery. By the end of the week, the damage was no longer cosmetic. sighed. One of Cassidy's horses kicked through a section of cedar fencing near the creek bed. Another tore up the irrigation line that fed the lower pasture. The animals had been left too long without proper supervision, and by Friday morning, sighed. One of the young breeding horses had caught its leg in the broken rail and gone down hard. The sound it made still stayed with me. A high, panic scream that cut across the ranch like pain itself had found a voice. I ran outside in boots and a jacket, sighed. Slipping on the frost as I reached the fence, Cassidy was already there, crying and shouting into her phone. Ethan stood nearby, helpless. The horse trembled on the ground, its flank heaving, its leg bleeding where the wood had splintered. I called the vet, sighed. Then I called Valerie, then I took pictures, every broken rail, every torn line, every hoof print, every streak of blood on the frost. When the vet finally left, I had a preliminary estimate, $22,000 in damage, sighed. That number did not include the long-term repair to the pasture. It did not include stress. It did not include the feeling of watching people treat the place I had built like a free storage lot for their failures. That night, sighed, Ethan found me in the kitchen with invoices spread across the island. He picked one up. What is this? Repair estimates. He tossed it back down. Cassidy is already upset. She should be. His eyes hardened. Don't start. I looked up slowly, sighed. Her horses destroyed my fence, my irrigation system, and injured one of her own animals because she brought them here without insurance, without a boarding agreement, and without permission. Ethan leaned across the island. You always do this. Do what? Sighed. You make everything about ownership. About paperwork, about control. I almost laughed. Because paperwork is what keeps people from stealing things, Ethan? Darlene entered just then, tying the belt of her robe. That is enough, she said. Cassidy feels terrible, sighed. Cassidy owes me $22,000. Darlene's face tightened. You would charge family. I looked at her. No, I would charge the person who caused the damage. She set her mug down with a soft, deliberate sound, sighed. This attitude is exactly why people are worried about you. There it was, another thread in the same net. I gathered the invoices calmly. Good night, Darlene. I locked myself in my office and uploaded everything to the Silver Ridge case file FATA's vet bill. Sighed. Repair estimates, a voice memo describing the event. By then, documenting them had become almost mechanical. But the next piece of evidence did not come from the ranch. It came from Wyoming First Bank. Megan Holt called me 2 days later, just after lunch. Sighed. Megan was the bank's commercial lending director. She and I had worked together when Silver Ridge Holdings LLC opened its accounts in 2018. She was professional, careful, and not easily rattled, sighed. That was why her tone made me sit up before she said a single serious word. Serafina, I need to ask you something directly. Okay, did you authorize any new lending activity connected to Silver Ridge Ranch? My hand went still over my keyboard, sighed. Did you sign or submit any collateral documentation involving the ranch? No. A long pause followed, then Megan said quietly, I was afraid of that. The air in my office seemed to change. What happened? We received a preliminary loan packet this morning, sighed. The requested amount is $250,000. The collateral listed is Silver Ridge Ranch. I stood so quickly my chair rolled back and hit the wall. Who submitted it? The application came through an intermediary, sighed, but the attached documents list Howard Mercer as an authorized managing party. My pulse slowed into something cold and precise. Howard has no authority over Silver Ridge Holdings. I know, Megan said. That's why I called you before anything moved forward, sighed. She sent me a secure copy 15 minutes later. I opened the file with Valerie on the phone. The first page was a loan application. The second page was a supposed authorization document. The third page made my stomach turn, a transfer of management rights. Sighed. My name appeared at the bottom. The signature was close enough to fool someone who was not looking carefully. But it was not mine. Valerie's voice went flat. This is forged. I stared at the screen. He used my signature. Yes, to borrow against my ranch. Yes. Sighed. Something inside me went very still. Until that moment, part of me had still wanted to believe there was a line they would not cross. Valerie continued. This is no longer family pressure. This is attempted financial fraud. I looked out the window at the pastures, sighed, at the broken fence line waiting to be repaired. What do? We preserve everything. Megan needs to freeze the application. Rebecca needs to trace any related communications. And Serafina, listen carefully, do not confront Howard alone. Sighed. That warning stayed with me. It made sense a few hours later. Nathan Cole called me after dark. I thought you should know something, he said. What is it? I saw Howard today. Where? Outside the old Stockyard Road near the county line. Sighed. He was meeting Silas Kane. I knew the name. Everybody in that part of Wyoming knew the name. Silas Kane did not run a bank. He ran what people politely called private lending. Desperate ranchers went to him when banks said no. Some lost land on, some lost equipment. Sighed. A few left town, Nathan's voice. I was loading supplies. Didn't mean to overhear, but Silas wasn't exactly whispering. What did he say? He told Howard Thanksgiving was the deadline. My fingers tightened around the phone. The deadline for what? Sighed. Money. Or collateral. Something he could record and enforce. I closed my eyes. The forged loan, the fake lease, the pressure, the gossip, the horses. All of it was starting to connect. Howard did not just want money. He needed it before Thanksgiving. Sighed. The next morning, I met Valerie and Rebecca in Valerie's office, Megan joined by secure video call. The four of us went through the documents page by page. Valerie marked the forged authorization. Rebecca traced Ethan's transfers. Sighed. Megan confirmed the loan packet had been stopped before approval. Every detail moved from suspicion into evidence. Valerie finally removed her glasses and looked at me. This is organized. Not elegant, but organized. Rebecca nodded. Sighed. You have rent payments obtained under false pretenses, diverted marital funds, a forged signature, and an attempted collateralized loan. Megan added, if I had not recognized the LLC structure, this could have gone very badly. Sighed. I felt a chill move through me. How badly? Valerie answered. Badly enough to drag your property into litigation for months. Maybe longer. Even if you won, they could have created a cloud on the title. A cloud on the title. Sighed. A phrase so calm it barely sounded violent, but I understood what it meant. They could not truly own my ranch, so they were poison it. Before I left, Rebecca asked me to wait. There's one more thing. She opened her laptop and turned the screen toward me. Sighed. I recovered a deleted email from an old device backup. Ethan's account synced to the joint cloud storage before he changed the settings. My mouth went dry. The sender was Ethan Mercer. The recipient was Howard Mercer. Sighed. The date was 3 weeks before Darlene handed me the fake lease. The message was short. If she won't sign, we make sure she has no other choice. I read it once, then again. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The room stayed perfectly still. Sighed. I had been telling myself Ethan had been weak, manipulated, pressured by his family, but that sentence stripped away the last soft lie I had been holding on to. He had not fallen into their plan. He had helped build it. Sighed. And as I sat there staring at my husband's words on Rebecca's screen, I finally understood that the man I married had not betrayed me at the end. He had been betraying me from the beginning. Sighed. Chapter 4. The truth was worse than I Imaginetti did not confront Ethan that night. I drove home from Valerie's office with the email printed and sealed inside a folder on the passenger seat. The mountains were already dark against the sky. Sighed. And the headlights cut through the road in narrow white strips. I remember gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands hurt, not because I was afraid, but because a part of me still wanted to turn the truck around and never go back. But Silver Ridge was mine. Sighed. The house was mine, the pastures, the fences, the barn, the old cottonwoods along the creek, all of it was mine. I was not going to be driven out of my own life by people who had mistaken patience for surrender. When I walked into the house, Ethan was in the kitchen. Sighed. Leaning against the island with a beer in his hand. Darlene and Howard were in the living room watching television. Cassidy was somewhere upstairs, probably complaining about the veterinarian bill, as if her own negligence had been an act of nature. Ethan looked up. Sighed. You're late. I set my keys on the counter. I had a meeting. With who? I took off my coat slowly. Valerie Cross. His expression changed for less than a second. Then he recovered. What for? Legal advice. He laughed once, but it came out too sharp. Sighed. About what? The horses? Serafina? Come on! I looked at him. About the lease, the transfers, the forged loan documents. The kitchen went quiet. From the living room, the television continued murmuring, but nobody there moved. Ethan set the beer bottle down. Sighed. I don't know what you think you found, but you're spiraling. There it was, the word he always reached for when facts made him uncomfortable. Spiraling. I found an email, I said. His jaw tightened. What email? I watched him closely. The one you sent Howard. Sighed. If she won't sign, we make sure she has no other choice. For the first time since this began, Ethan looked genuinely afraid. Only for a breath, and anger arrived to cover it. You went through my private messages? Sighed. I went through financial records connected to a fraud investigation. He stepped closer. You're twisting things. No, I'm reading them. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. I almost smiled. There it was again. The pivot, not denial anymore. Sighed. Just justification. No, you don't, he snapped. My parents lost everything. Cassidy had nowhere to put those horses. Howard has people breathing down his neck. Sighed. You sit up here in your perfect office with your perfect spreadsheets acting like everyone else is beneath you. I let him speak. Every word confirmed the pattern. He was not sorry. He was insulted that I had noticed. You could have helped us, he said. I did help. Sighed. My terms were that nobody commit fraud. His eyes flashed. That ranch has carried both of us for years. No, Ethan. I carried both of us. The ranch was never yours. That landed. I saw it hit something ugly in him. Sighed. Darlene appeared in the kitchen doorway. What is going on? Ethan did not look away from me. She's threatening the family. I turned my eyes to Darlene. No, I am documenting the family. Her face hardened. Sighed. You always did think paperwork made you better than everyone. No, paperwork just makes it harder for people to lie. Howard stepped into the doorway behind her, pale and quiet. He looked smaller than usual. Not guilty, trapped. That difference mattered. Sighed. Ethan pointed toward the hallway. You're making this impossible. I didn't forge anything. You don't know what you're talking about. I know Howard tried to borrow $250,000 against Silver Ridge Ranch. Howard swallowed. Sighed. Darlene's hand tightened around the doorframe. Ethan stared at me as if he were trying to calculate how much I knew, so I gave him nothing else. I picked up my coat and walked past him. Where are you going? He demanded. To my office. Sighed. This conversation is not over. I stopped at the hallway entrance. For me, it ended the moment I saw your email. I locked my office door behind me. Then I wrote down every word I could remember. That had become my discipline. I did not trust emotion. Sighed. I trusted records. The next week moved like a storm gathering behind glass. Valerie and Rebecca worked through every layer of the case. The rent payments became the foundation. Each transfer had a date, an amount, and the same clean memo, rent. Sighed. The withdrawals from the joint account showed theft by deception and financial misconduct. The damaged fences, irrigation line, pasture restoration, and veterinary expenses documented property damage tied directly to Cassidy's unauthorized horses. Sighed. The loan packet Megan stopped showed a forged signature and attempted collateral fraud. The application process itself raised wire fraud concerns because documents had moved electronically between an intermediary, a private lender, and Wyoming First Bank. Sighed. Valerie did not dramatize any of it. She simply built the file page by date, lie by lie. At the same time my professional life started shaking, Jordan Pike requested a formal call with my executive team at North Star Freight Systems. Sighed. I sat in a conference room in Salt Lake City with 2 senior directors and our general counsel while Jordan appeared on the screen from Denver. His expression was controlled. We value the relationship with North Star, he said. Sighed. But our board is concerned about reputational exposure. We've heard repeated claims involving private financial instability and possible property litigation tied to your name. I felt every eye in the room shift toward me, not with judgment, with concern. Sighed. That almost hurt worse. I placed both hands flat on the table. Jordan, the claims you heard are false. They are part of a private family matter that has escalated into documented fraud. My attorney is preparing the relevant records now. North Star is not at risk. Sighed. Can you provide written assurance? Yes. When? Within 48 hours. After the call ended, our general counsel looked at me. Is this going to become public? I thought about Thanksgiving, about Darlene's invitations. Sighed. About all the people she wanted watching her victory. Yes, I said. But not the way they think. That afternoon, I met Megan Holt again. She had something new. Not a new loan document, an old one. We sat in a private conference room at Wyoming First Bank. Sighed. Megan placed a scanned document in front of me and turned it so I could read it. This was from 2020, she said, when Silver Ridge Holdings updated its banking authorizations after your marriage. I scanned the page. My signature was there. So was Ethan's. Sighed. Not as an owner, as a spouse acknowledging that Silver Ridge Holdings LLC existed as a separate entity owned by me. The air left my lungs slowly. He signed this? Megan nodded. I pulled it because something about his current story bothered me. Sighed. He knew the LLC structure. He knew the ranch was not marital property. He knew before any of this started. I stared at Ethan's signature. The betrayal I had already accepted deepened into something colder. He had not misunderstood. Sighed. He had not been fooled by his parents. He had not believed Darlene's fiction about a management company. He knew he had always known, and still he let his mother charge me rent. Still he let Howard forge documents. Still, sighed, he let Cassidy bring animals onto land she had no right to use. Still, he watched people in town pity me for needing charity in a home I owned outright through my company. Megan's voice softened. I'm sorry, Serafina. I folded the copy carefully. Sighed. Thank you for finding it. When I brought it to Valerie, even she went quiet. Rebecca read it twice, finally said, "This changes intent." I looked at her. How? It shows he knew the truth before the scheme began. Sighed. That makes it harder for him to claim misunderstanding or family confusion. Rebecca added, he cannot say he thought Howard had authority. Not after signing this. I sat back in the chair. The office felt too warm, the world too clear. For weeks, sighed. I had been grieving the collapse of my marriage. Now I understood I had been mourning something that had already died long before I noticed. Ethan had not chosen them over me in one weak moment. He had chosen himself over me again and again, quietly, carefully, sighed, deliberately. And while we built the legal file, Darlene built her stage. Thanksgiving became her obsession. She ordered floral centerpieces from town. She invited relatives from Colorado, Montana, and Nebraska. She invited members of the church board, sighed. She invited Claire Donnelly and 2 other people from the Ranch and Landowners Association. She called it a celebration of family resilience. I heard her on the phone one morning while I stood unseen in the hallway. She has been struggling, Darlene said softly, sighed, but we are trying to give her dignity. Ethan has been carrying so much. I waited until she finished the call, then I returned to my office and added one more note to the file. Darlene Mercer continues false public narrative, sighed. Valerie did not like the idea of Thanksgiving at first. When I told her Darlene had invited half the county to watch her perform charity, she sat back and looked at me for a long time. You know what happens if you do this in front of everyone? Yes, sighed. There will be no quiet version afterward. I don't want the quiet version. Rebecca glanced up from her laptop. You want witnesses? I nodded. I need witnesses. Valerie studied my face. Are you sure you want to do this in front of all of them? For a second, sighed. I thought about the woman I had been in May, the one who opened her home because family needed help, the one who wanted to believe Ethan was just caught between people he loved, the one who still thought kindness would be recognized as kindness, sighed. Then I thought about Darlene calling me poor thing in front of church members, Howard trying to borrow against my land, Cassidy's horses bleeding in my pasture, Ethan's signature on the 2020 acknowledgement. I looked at Valerie. I don't need them to believe me, sighed. My voice was steady. I need them to see the truth. The day before Thanksgiving, Valerie handed me the final portfolio. It was heavier than I expected. Inside were certified copies of the LLC ownership records, the 2020 spousal acknowledgement, the fake lease, sighed, rent transfers, joint account withdrawals, property damage estimates, the forged loan packet, Megan's banking statement, Nathan's witness notes, and Ethan's recovered email. A marriage can end with shouting. A fraud case ends with paper, sighed. I placed the portfolio on the passenger seat of my truck before driving back to Silver Ridge. The late November sky was pale and hard above the Tetons. Snow clung to the fence lines. The ranch house glowed in the distance, every window lit, sighed. Every lie inside waiting for an audience. For the first time in months, my hands were not shaking. They thought Thanksgiving would be their victory dinner. They did not know I was bringing the evidence. Chapter 5. The day their lies collapsed by noon, sighed. The house looked like a magazine spread built on a lie. Darlene had ordered white pumpkins, cedar garlands, gold napkin rings, and enough flowers to make the dining room smell like a funeral pretending to be a wedding. Every candle was lit, every glass was polished, sighed. Every place card was written in her careful looping hand, including mine, placed near the far end of the table like an afterthought. The guests arrived in waves, Mercer cousins from Colorado, an uncle from Nebraska, 2 women from church, sighed. Claire Donnelly from the Ranch and Landowners Association, Nathan Cole, who surprised everyone by accepting Darlene's invitation. Megan Holt came too, though Darlene barely recognized her beyond polite banking circles, sighed. Valerie Cross arrived shortly after with Rebecca Sloan, both dressed simply, both carrying themselves with the calm of women who had read every page before entering the room. Darlene thought she had gathered an audience for my humiliation, sighed. She had actually gathered witnesses. Ethan watched me from across the room while pretending not to. He wore a dark jacket and the confident expression of a man who believed volume could still beat evidence. Howard stayed close to the fireplace, pale but upright, sighed, gripping a glass he never drank from. Cassidy laughed too loudly near the appetizers, telling someone her horses were finally settled, as if they had not caused $22,000 in damage. I said little. I helped carry dishes. I refilled water glasses, sighed. I let Darlene enjoy her stage. Dinner began with the usual noise, silverware, laughter, people asking about weather and roads and football. For almost an hour, the room looked normal. That was the strangest part. Betrayal can sit at a table, pass the potatoes, sighed, and smile like it belongs there. Then Darlene stood. The room quieted immediately. She held her wine glass and looked at Ethan with shining pride. This year has tested our family, she said, but it has also reminded us what real family does. Real family steps in, sighed. Real family provides shelter. Real family carries the people who cannot carry themselves. A few people nodded. My fingers rested lightly on the leather portfolio beside my chair. Darlene turned her smile toward me. And of course, we must acknowledge Serafina, sighed. She has been a gracious guest in this home during a very difficult season of her life. We are grateful she has allowed us to provide structure and stability when she needed it most. The applause started exactly as it had in my memory, polite, warm, completely wrong, sighed. Claire Donnelly clapped softly, though her eyes stayed on me. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Cassidy smirked. Howard stared into his glass. I waited until the applause faded. Then I stood, not quickly, not dramatically, just stood, sighed. The chair legs scraped softly against the hardwood floor. Every face turned toward me. I placed the portfolio on the table and opened it. Darlene, thank you for giving me the room. Her smile faltered. I took out the first document and laid it on the table, sighed. This is the purchase record for Silver Ridge Ranch dated August 2018. The buyer is Silver Ridge Holdings, LLC. I placed another page beside it. This is the operating agreement. Sole managing member, Serafina Vale. The silence came slowly, sighed. Like snow covering a road, I turned the documents so the nearest guests could read them. This ranch was never Ethan's. It was never Howard's. It was never Darlene's. I bought it 2 years before I married Ethan. Someone near the end of the table whispered, "What?" sighed. Darlene's private business, she said. No, I replied. Renting me my own house was private business. Telling half the county that I was bankrupt made it public. I placed the next packet on the table. Between June and October, sighed. I transferred $4,500 per month to Howard and Darlene Mercer. Every payment was labeled rent, sighed. Every payment was made after they gave me a fake lease claiming they had taken control of the property through a management company that does not exist. Ethan pushed his chair back slightly. Serafina, stop. I did not look at him, sighed. Rebecca stood and handed copies down both sides of the table, she said. Dates, amounts, receiving accounts. Howard's face drained of color. Darlene whispered, You had no right. I looked at her then. I had every right, sighed. It was my money, my property, my name. Valerie stepped forward. The lease document presented to Ms. Vale contains an incorrect parcel number, a false management reference, and no valid authority from Silver Ridge Holdings, LLC, sighed. A cousin near Ethan picked up a copy and stared at it. Ethan, did you know this? Ethan's mouth tightened. This is being twisted. I removed the next page. No, this is being clarified. I placed the recovered email on the table. Sighed. It took Ethan only one glance to recognize it. If she won't sign, we make sure she has no other choice. I read. This time the room did not just go quiet. It froze. Ethan stood. That was taken out of context. Then explain the context. He pointed at me. Sighed. She has been unstable for months. She records everything. She turns normal family problems into evidence. I let him speak, the old tactic, the familiar one, make me sound emotional, so the facts sound cruel. Megan Holt stood near the doorway. Sighed. That email matches the timeline of a loan application submitted using forged authority documents, she said. Wyoming First Bank received a request for $250,000 using Silver Ridge Ranch as collateral. Ms. Vale did not authorize it. Sighed. Howard gripped the back of his chair. Darlene whispered. I removed the forged document and placed it on top of the stack. My signature is on this page. I did not sign it. Valerie added calmly, sighed. The document has been preserved for review by law enforcement. Cassidy's laugh had vanished. She looked around the table as if searching for someone still on her side. Nathan Cole cleared his throat. I saw Howard walking the south boundary with measuring tools, sighed. He said, I also saw Cassidy bring horses onto the property without permission. I have dated photographs. Cassidy snapped. You were spying on us? Nathan looked at her. No, you were doing it in plain sight. That was when Claire Donnelly slowly stood, sighed. Her face had changed. The pity was gone. In its place was something sharper. She looked directly at Darlene. So everything you told us at church, at the association meeting, all those things about Serafina being broke and you saving this ranch, that was a lie? Sighed. Darlene opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Claire's voice lowered. You let this woman be humiliated in her own community. For the first time, Darlene looked small, not sorry. Exposed, Ethan slammed his palm against the table. Enough, sighed. All of you are letting her manipulate this. She hates my family. She has always hated my family. No one agreed. He turned on me. You think a folder makes you powerful? I looked at him. No. The truth does. A hard knock sounded from the front door. Sighed. 3 strikes firm, measured. Everyone turned. I did not. I already knew who it was. Valerie had filed the preliminary reports that morning. Megan had provided the bank packet. Nathan's statement had been added. Side. The sheriff's office had been notified of the attempted fraud and the escalating property dispute. Deputy Mason Reed stepped into the foyer with another officer behind him. His hat was dusted with snow. "Evening," he said. Sighed. "I'm looking for Howard Mercer and Ethan Mercer." Howard sat down as if his knees had failed. Ethan's face went red. "This is a private family dinner." Deputy Reed looked around the table. "Not anymore." Nobody spoke after that. Sighed. Not while Howard was escorted to the foyer to answer questions about the forged documents. Not while Ethan argued and contradicted himself. Not while Darlene sat frozen with one hand pressed to her chest. Sighed. Watching the social world she had built collapse in the space of 10 minutes. Cassidy cried when Valerie informed her that the property damage claim would be filed separately and that her lack of insurance would not make the bill disappear. The guests left quietly. Sighed. Some avoided my eyes, some touched my arm. Claire stopped near the door. "I owe you an apology," she said. I nodded once. "You believed what she wanted you to believe." She looked ashamed. "Yes, I did." By midnight, the house was almost empty. Sighed. The candles had burned low. The turkey had gone cold. Ethan did not sleep in our bedroom that night. By morning, he was gone. In the weeks that followed, the consequences arrived without drama. Valerie filed for divorce on my behalf. Sighed. Citing financial misconduct and fraud. Ethan lost any claim he imagined he had to Silver Ridge Ranch. His debt remained his own. Howard faced a criminal investigation tied to the forged authorization and attempted collateral loan. Sighed. Darlene resigned from 2 church committees and stopped attending association events after too many people stopped pretending not to know. Cassidy received a civil demand for the damages her horses caused. Sighed. The $18 million North Star contract stayed in place. Jordan Pike called personally after reviewing the legal assurance packet. "I'm sorry you had to prove what should have never been questioned," he said. "So am I replied. Sighed. Winter settled hard over the Tetons. Snow covered the north pasture. The broken fence was repaired. The irrigation line was replaced. The house grew quiet again, but this time the quiet did not feel lonely. It felt clean. One morning, sighed. I stood on the back porch with a mug of coffee warming my hands. The sun rose behind the mountains, pale gold spilling over the ridges and touching every acre I had fought for. No one was calling me a guest. No one was charging me rent. Sighed. No one was standing in my home pretending my work belonged to them. I thought revenge would feel louder. It did not. It felt like breathing without waiting for the next insult. It felt like locking my own front door and knowing nobody inside wanted to take the key. Sighed. For the first time in months, Silver Ridge Ranch was only what it had always been meant to be, mine. And I was finally at peace. If you have ever had someone twist your kindness into weakness or try to take credit for something you built with your own hands, sighed. I hope this story reminds you that silence is not always surrender. Sometimes it is preparation. Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place, and if stories like this matter to you. Stay with this channel for more stories about betrayal, truth, side, and the quiet kind justice that changes everything.